Now, valuation requirements for funding under various regulations are as follows, both for equity and convertibles. You have Companies Act. That means you need valuation under Companies Act. You need valuation under FEMA if there is cross-border transactions, and obviously for income tax. In the course of our discussion before the break, I think I already mentioned about some of them, so you're already aware about it. Just to take you through the nuances here. Funding through equity, you may get the money either from a resident or you may receive the money from a non-resident. So let's take one at a time. Let's say resident. If the money is coming from a resident, then what happens? Under Companies Act, if at all you're going for a rights issue, there is no requirement of valuation, because rights issue is to your existing shareholders, so does not talk about any valuation requirements, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're going for private placement, then you need to have an RV report. Then the question comes up is, RV report is valid for how long? So let us say every 15 days, 1 month, if I'm getting a new funding, should I keep doing a valuation every time is the question. So we say it has around 6 months. Now this validity of 6 months is not by law. Law does not specify any such time limit. It's only a industry practice. As an industry practice, we all believe that you can have a valuation report and keep it valid for 6 months, because we don't expect too much of changes in the company which will affect the valuation to that large extent to change the valuation itself, and therefore we say 6 months is a good time to have. It is an industry practice only, not by law. That is for the registered valuers report. All this is under Companies Act. Let's come to income tax. Now, as far as income tax is concerned, it is applicable if you issue it at a premium only, that we have discussed before the break. Only then it will apply. Chartered accountant's report is good enough if at all your valuation is based on NAV, which is basically your 11UA valuation, asset minus liabilities. Whereas if you're going for a DCF, then merchant banker valuation will be required. So if you see income tax 11UA provision also, it says that if your valuation methodology is on DCF, then you'll have to go for merchant banker. If it's just a pure NAV, then a CA certificate is more than sufficient. Just because we are chartered accountants, you should not tell the company we'll go only for NAV, but it all depends on the client, how it is, as to what is the current stage of the client, what is the transactions happening. So if they already have a good EBITDA going on, then they would obviously prefer to go for a DCF, because internationally accepted valuation methodology is what we should use. And in that process, we'll have to go for a DCF valuation, then MB will come into picture. Then for FEMA, of course, for a resident, it's not at all applicable, because he's a resident, you don't have to worry about FEMA part. Come to non-resident. For a non-resident, for income tax and Companies Act, same as resident, whatever I told you before. For FEMA, it is applicable. Obviously, non-residents will apply, and it's either a chartered accountant or an MB report, and the validity is 3 months. Now, this is by law. Now, this is not an industry practice. This is what the law itself is telling. Law itself says that there is a validity period of 3 months, and therefore, once you get a valuation, you can keep and stick to the same valuation for the next 3 months, and then you'll have to go for another valuation if you have crossed. So therefore, it is 6 and 3. So, very good question. Now the question is, I spoke about company law validity time. I spoke about FEMA. So madam caught me in audit. So she did one audit and said, this side you told, that side you told. What about income tax? You did not tell. So we say income tax is always linked with the combo offer. What I mean by combo offer is income tax by silo does not come. It is coming either because of this side Companies Act or that side FEMA. And therefore we say whatever is the validity periods for Companies Act and FEMA will apply for income tax. I think I'm clear on this. It doesn't tell you that the report should be on. If you see, it talks about. Correct, because what happens in income tax is you are trying to value a transaction. So therefore, my relevant date obviously becomes a transaction. So transaction becomes the relevant date. Now, let us say I'm having a transaction every week. So going by the literal interpretation of 5627B, can I take a relevant date as transaction date? Even if I take, let's assume hypothetically I've taken it. So what is the change that I will have in my valuation? There will not be much. You understand? So therefore, we stick to this concept only. Department may come back telling that it should have been there. We say you prove it and show me that there is a change in my valuation. Normally it will not be there, because the methodologies what we use will not change in 1 week or 10 days. None of them will change. So therefore it should not matter, and department also knows this. So what we have seen in most of the assessments is they say whatever you're relying If it's FEMA, this side 3 months, the Companies Act, that side 6 months is good enough for me also. I think I'm clear. No, it's not about which is better. It's what is the company's position. So if the company is a good profitable entity, you go for DCF methods only. Otherwise, only you go for NAV methods where it is just a book value valuation. Yes, right. So it's not based on our choice. It's based on company, how it is performing. Right. Thank you. So I think this is clear on valuation part. Yeah. Don't ask me further questions now. Let us do some valuations because it's not a valuation session. For FEMA, for everything. Yeah, because there is a cross border, no, that is happening. Yeah, this I've already discussed. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so let's get into CSR now, shall we? So I think we had some value addition on funding. I think this session helped you on funding. So let's get into CSR, corporate social responsibility. Thanks. Somebody asked me this question, that this is actually blackmail. They said CSR is not CSR, it's actually blackmail. Saying that my money, this is like at the signal light. I don't know how many of you have experienced. I have experienced, at least not nowadays because now I use car. Before, when I used to go by two-wheeler, I used to get so scared to stop at the signal light, because I'll stop at the signal light. Some of them will come, right? They'll come and say, give money, give money. Simply if they come and ask, give money, it's okay, because now car is there, we'll put off the glass and say, kodala, 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 kodala. But before it was two-wheeler, I can't put glass also. I remember one of those days, I was in a two-wheeler, stopped at the signal light, and they were coming, and I was getting scared because they were coming like this, and they were telling me, no, I'm just telling you my experience. So no offense meant to anybody, no offense at all, seriously, but just to share my experience. Actually, I was getting scared because sometimes they start putting all the curses and shapa ella haki. They'll do blah 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 dot 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 and all they will tell. I used to get scared. So I'm standing there at the signal, I'm like green, 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 and the signal change to green before they come to me. As it is, I was shivering. I was getting scared because they'll come and they'll not leave me if they don't. So they came off, and the signal did not turn green, it was still red only. They came as it is, I was scared, as if it was not enough. They told my name also. I got even, they said, hi, Nan Raja. I said, how do you know my instrument? Right. Now you don't have a choice. So it is compulsory. So it looks like a charity, but sometimes it is compulsory. So I think here also CSR may look like a charity, but it is compulsory sometimes. So we can't help it. So let's start with CSR, right? So let's begin with CSR provisions, right? Let's start. Now, as far as the CSR provisions are concerned, if you see some statistics, just to start with a few statistics, 121 billion Indian rupees only. I think we have a banker, right? So if you see, this is in financial year 22, 200 leading companies listed at the Bombay Stock Exchange in India spent over 121 billion Indian rupees as part of their CSR. That's huge. That's huge. That means we are now talking about an alternate government. Because what was once upon a time supposed to be a government's role, you're talking actually about an alternate government coming into picture types. If you see all the, we call it as the HLI report, that is high level committee reports was there. If you look into the high level committee reports, the reports also very clearly said that government is not able to catch up with the pace at which the requirement is there in the country. And therefore we need the support. And that support has to come from the corporate world. And therefore they said, that's the situation. We can't help it. Now let's look at the reality, what's happened here. If you look at some of this, even if you can't see the slide properly, don't worry. It's not important, out of syllabus. Right? So if you look at this actually here, the green is the actual amount spent on CSR, and the orange is the prescribed CSR what they were supposed to spend. So if you look at Tata's, the green greater than the orange. If you can just look through all the companies, it doesn't matter which company it is, all companies, if you see, the green is greater than orange. I think that talks a lot about our Indian corporate. I think they deserve a round of applause for a good job what they're all doing. I think that's nice to know. So on the one hand, we are telling that, oh, there's a limit on CSR and you're forcing me to spend blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, if you see the reality is they're all spending more than what they were supposed to spend under section 135. So nobody is restricting themselves to 135 alone. They've all gone beyond 135. So then that's the reality of the story. So which means maybe there are some small entities which will say that, hey, 2% I'm unnecessarily supposed to spend, but the reality is they've all gone far beyond that. Now, let me just tell you about what started as a charity is now a responsibility, and from a responsibility, it's become a mandate. So initially it started, I'm giving you some history here. I don't think we have to spend time on that. By history, it all started like charity, and then we said, okay, you have to take care of society and blah, blah. And finally, now we've reached a stage where it's a mandatory provision now. Now, CSR Indian scenario, we use this very popular dialogue in Hindi. I'm sure many of you would have heard of this dialogue. It's called as Neki Kar, Darya Mein Dal, a very popular Hindi statement. And some of you who don't know Hindi, Neki Kar, Darya Mein Dal means ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ದರಿಯಾ ಮೇ ದಾಲ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮರ್ತೋಗಿ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನೀರಲ್ಲಿ ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಂಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ you put it in water and it's gone. Then you forget about it. Do something like how we say if you have done something in the right hand, the left hand should not know types, in the sense that, you know, you've done charity, the right should, left should also not know. So it's like that. You just do charity and just forget about it. It's called as Neki Kar Darya Mein Dal. And people used to tell this dialogue whenever you used to say CSR. You know, people used to say, "Oh, Neki Kar Darya Mein Dal, chhod do, it's okay. Do good and leave it off." Chance illa. Section 135 will levy left, right, center penalty on you if you follow this procedure. Because now the system is Neki Kar or report karo. Website may report karo. In the website, you have to tell what is your CSR initiatives. Your board's report must have an annexure talking about what is your CSR spending. Your AOC4, when you're filing, along with that, you have to file about what is the CSR. Auditors will tell you whether you have done or not done CSR. So, Neki Kar Darya Mein Dal nahi hai. So after that, if you don't take it, they'll put you into Darya. Matlab, they will put us into the water and make us flow away. So therefore, this concept doesn't work anymore, because there's a lot of compliances that we have to take care now once you're talking about CSR. There was a time wherein when CSR started under 135, very clever, government did. They said, comply. This is what it used to be. Comply or reason out. Means what? You gave a reason why you did not spend. That's all it was. Okay, I couldn't spend. I was busy, whatever reasons. But I did not spend. Give one reason, good enough. Now it is no more comply and reason out. It is now comply or penalty. So that means now it is a mandatory provision. Now it's no more Darya Mein Dal concept at all. This is something I thought I will start my discussion with. I will not start again journal entry and all. No, don't say, that time you started journal entry. Now we'll start with something else. Cash versus accrual. Again, back to first PC. There is a journal entry. Now we are talking about cash versus accrual. There's something very important for us to understand practically, again, very practical. Cash versus accrual. What is that? If you see, we are profits, I'm supposed to take PBT, profit before taxes, and that too calculated under section 198. So based on that 198 calculation, what we normally do for managerial remuneration, take that 198 profit and it should be before tax. Okay, I took the profit before tax. That means in the profit before tax, already tax is going to go first, whether I like it or not. So out of the tax is going off. Okay, it will go. Let it go. Then I have to now talk about 2% as an expenditure based on the 3 years average. That's okay. But the fact is 2% is my expenditure. Now let's talk about practically. Normally, because we are all of the same profession, what will be the normal NP ratio in most of the client cases on some average? I'm not talking about GP ratio, gross profit ratio. I'm telling net profit ratio. NP ratio would be under normally, not the GP, gross profit or EBITDA ratio and all. I'm telling about the NP ratio, 10%. So I'll take an average of 10% so that it's easy to calculate. Calculator bada. Yeah. So let's put it as around 10%. Let's imagine by a calculation, okay. Profit margin 10%. is what I have. Now think from the point of view of reality of business. I will always have credit sales. I have a huge amount of debtors sitting. So I'll have a huge debtors turnover ratio, which is there. That means in reality, my profits are actually sitting in debtors. In the actual business scenario I'm talking about, because whatever little money I was left, I paid taxes because that he does not give me time. So I have to pay my taxes. So that means my profit is there. I'm not denying I don't have a profit. I have a profit, but my profit is sitting in debtors. But then you say, I have to spend 2%. It doesn't say spendable, right? It says spend. Now here is I feel that there is a lot of a mismatch in the way the calculation has been done. In the sense, one side you want me to take the profits on accrual basis, because my profits is all on accrual basis. But when it comes to CSR 2%, it's on cash basis, because you're making me spend. So you're taking an accrual number, and from an accrual number, you're coming out with a cash number. But I think this is against accountancy principle itself. So that means, in other words, you're following mixed system of accounting, which we had banned. That hybrid system, cash and accrual together, which we don't allow only. But here you're following cash and accrual as a mixed concept here. I think you're with me in what I'm talking about. Now, this is where the problem of a client comes into picture. See, this is where the client says, look, I don't have a problem in spending. I have a problem in understanding from where do I get the money. So it's like I have to take a loan for the sake of spending. Now, I don't deny I don't have profits, but there's a fight between cash versus accruals. So this is one major practical issue. I don't have a solution for this, but this is a practical issue, because that we can tell even for taxes. No, same dialogue you can say for tax also. My taxes is in debtors. So ask my debtors, I'll give you the list. Which income tax officer will agree for that? He said, that's your problem. You pay. So same way, extra 2% you add for that and say this also I have to spend. Then we have the CSR committee part. Now this cycle, I want all of you to be clear on this. We will have a CSR policy, right? If you see today's style, we are no more interested in simply neki kar darya mein dal concept. Because there's a reporting requirement, now my ego comes into picture. Send hello, I'm spending so much money. Now everybody asks me, including my shareholders, in the meeting, in the AGMs, they'll ask me saying that, how did you spend? What good have you done to society? Those questions they started to ask. So now it's not simply about taking some money and putting out to some fund, some of the government funds. That is the easiest way to do. Take money, calculate the 2%, simply give it out to some PM cares and things like that and say, ho gaya. Yeah, Darya mein dal bola na, so Ganga. So give it off to Ganga fund and things like that. That's an easier way to do it. But no company is actually interested in doing that. Now they say, let me create something so that I also am creating an impact. So if you see the recommendation of the HLC committee report, they said, try to spend the money on the local areas where you operate. No mandate, then try to spend. So that means, don't you think indirectly government also is telling that indirect marketing is okay? The very fact you're telling, spend the money on local. Let's say I'm having a factory. I'm having a factory in one of the suburban, let us say one of those tier 2 cities. So they're asking me to spend the money in the local area, which indirectly means there is a branding for me. Direct branding is not CSR. If I say I'm spending money on advertisement, I'm spending money on marketing, that is supposed to be not a CSR at all. We all know that. But actually indirectly they're allowing me to do branding because they're only telling me spend it on the local area where you operate. So that means there is some benefit I do get from the society when I'm spending CSR. This has been very well understood by all the major corporates. So they've understood there may not be a direct impact as far as I'm concerned, but I think my brand image is going up by doing, and that is why the first slide makes sense to us. Why they're spending more than what they were supposed to spend. And that's how slowly the entire corporate trend is changing. Yes, sir. Can you spend on colleges? Can you spend the money on colleges? If you see the latest amendment that happened in 21 and 22, there were two amendments which happened, one in 21 and 22 in the CSR rules. There they've added for an implementing agency. They have added implementing agency. If you see the definition and in your rules for CSR rules, they've added implementing agencies where they said it includes, it used to be only an entity which was covered under, registered under 12A and 80G used to be. Now they amended the law and said, from now on, we also include entities which are under 1023C, 4, 5, 6, 7A, which means what? Now your educational institutions, hospitals, all of them are getting covered under this criteria. And that means now you can, as long as they are a CSR Schedule 7, 100%, then you can give. I think you also got my point, right? So basically we are telling simple, as long as it is still CSR, part of Schedule 7, which we are going to get into now, right? What is the Schedule 7 and all that? And it's a philanthropic entity, not a profitable entity. Absolutely no problem at all. Absolutely no problem, which is expressly given by law. I'm not even telling implied. I will show it to you as I go forward as to how it is expressly given. So this entire process has become very popular now. So for us, advising the client is to tell him first to have a CSR policy. This is the first thing we have to tell a client. Hey, please have one CSR policy, have a strategy as to what is it that you want to make a change in somebody's life. At the end, we'll also discuss about impact assessment. Currently, impact assessment is only about 10 crores requirement, but otherwise, what is the objective? What is the change I'm able to bring in because of the money that I'm trying to spend? So we're talking about having a CSR policy, identifying the cause, and the cause should be within Schedule 7, whatever is given there. Then modes of spending, we'll discuss that. There's a utilization certificate we have to take to prove that I have spent it. And then you keep monitoring the entire process and again see whether you have to revise your CSR policy and the chain continues. Now, the entire topic of discussion on CSR is split like this. So this is what I'll take you through. We will take you through in this session. That is on applicability of CSR, CSR committee, expenditure, Schedule 7. Then what is not CSR? Then your compliance calendar as to what you should take care. I'll just tell you what is the compliance you have to take care. Then the amendment rules regarding reporting. Then profits for CSR and expenditure and implementing of CSR. In this, we'll try to reduce the theory part and try to increase practically what all we should take care of and where the client always, because normally client comes back and tells, first you did not tell me that I was supposed to spend. This we should have only told. So client always, you didn't tell that I was supposed to spend. So that is the first thing we have to check is whether he's crossing those limits. So right from the applicability part. So Shri, if you can just take us through from there. From here. Okay, I'll take this first. Okay, thanks. So she gave me permission. So if you look at this, first applicability. Now, as far as section 135 is concerned, it says if you have net worth of 500 crores or more, one criteria, and mind you, it is or. That means any one criteria satisfied. Or if you have a turnover of 1000 crores or more, or net profit of 5 crores or more. Practically, most of these private entities will land up here. That is net profit of 5 crores or more. The larger entities will anyway get covered here. That means if you're looking at the listed entities and all those guys, they get covered in any of these criteria. But the regular private entities normally gets covered here. That is net profit of 5 crores or more. And some of these large private entities get covered here also with a turnover of 1000 crores or more. Now for them, CSR will become applicable. This is your 135. So I always tell that easy to remember 135. This I used to tell when I used to teach. I don't teach anymore. I only take sessions like this, that's all. So when I used to teach, I used to tell, easy to remember 135. So I should tell them 135 means what? Section 135 says there are 3 conditions. These three conditions. In the 3 conditions, one condition is about 5, that is 500 crores. Then one more condition is about 1. 1 is at 1000 crores. And there's a bracket 1. That one is this point which says that 5 must be repeated one more time. And therefore we say 5 crores, right? So that's how I should tell them to remember. So basically the criteria to remember very easy. You should have a net profit of 5 crores or more. Now, when should I have all this? We're talking about preceding financial year. That means I'm not taken by surprise. 31st March is over. Now we are in June. So I think I already know what is my position for 31st March year ending. Let's take currently. We're talking about year ending 31st March 23. So I think I already know my position. So because I'm looking at preceding financial year, I know whether I've already satisfied any of these conditions. If I've satisfied, then in the current year, that is 23, 24, I should ensure I have CSR committee and start spending on CSR. So this is, I think, very clear for us. Now, having talked about the applicability of CSR as to whom it applies, So immediate question. Can it happen that 1 year CSR applies, next year CSR does not apply? Third year again CSR applies, fourth year CSR does not apply. Can it happen? Of course it can happen, because every time I'm looking at only previous year. So just like how we have an income tax, when we talk about residential status, right? When we talk about residential status, section 6 subsection 1 income tax act, we always tell that only, saying that look at what you were in the previous year. Maybe last year I was a non-resident, but this year I'm a resident, and again I can change next year. Now let's talk about the committee part. So first question that comes about committee, should I have a committee? Once I have a committee, should I always have a committee, or that also can be coming and going? So what do you feel about the committee? CSR applicability we understood, every year it can change. CSR committee once it is formed, let us say this year CSR applies and therefore I have a committee. Committee should stay, or they can also like 1 year be there, 1 year not there. So that means 1 year they can be there, next year no committee. If it's not, I mean, if the applicability is not there. Yeah. So sir is telling that if the provision only is not applicable, then what will I do with committee? Sumne samosa waste alli anta. Or one samosa, jamun, ella kotto committee meeting madi, because it's compulsory, Once you have committee, you have to have meetings. Meeting and mele eating. Every meeting must have a eating, So, oh, drink. Ayyo. Acha, coffee tea, then it's right. So we had a very strange provision in CSR. They said once CSR becomes applicable, then the committee will cease. Look at the wordings. Committee will cease only if the parameters are not met for 3 consecutive years. I don't know if you understood the law there. So for 3 consecutive years, if the parameters are not met, then only committee will cease. Which means I have a committee, next 3 years Dakota company. You know what I mean? Profit illa, turnover illa, nothing is there. Yeah, committee mata samosa jamun guaranteed. Adu 3 years. And that was a ridiculous provision, and like what you said, when applicability only is not there, why you need committee? So thankfully they've amended now. Now they've amended, they've deleted rule 3(2). Recently they've deleted this provision. And by deleting that provision, now what? Because of deleting the provision, now the implication of that is, like what sir said, if it is applicable, have. Not applicable, committee not required. So that is the latest law now. Finally your point has been taken. Right. So as far as the committee is concerned, applicability is based on 135(1). That is the 3 parameters, what we saw. Then the CSR committee will be there under 1 and 2, and their job is to take care of the expenditure. That is 135(5), which talks about the expenditure part. Now CSR committee, let me quickly tell you about the committee part. 3 or more directors, of which at least 1 shall be independent director. That is where you have an independent director. For a private company, anyway, we don't have independent directors and all. So what happens here is second case, if company is not required to have an independent director, then 2 or more directors. So out of the board of directors, 2 of them will come and sit as CSR committee. Then disclose composition CSR committee in the board's report. Now, this is all, it's so unfortunate. All these points used to be neglected before. I have board's report only what we write, what we don't write, it's okay. Anta. Please see from the last, I think 6 months to 1 year, the kind of notices all the private companies are getting now, because they're telling board's report is not, it is wrong. Your board's report is not complying with the law. Your filings are not correct. Your disclosures are not correct. The way they're levying penalties left, right. So all of you, please, I'm sure all of you must be aware. Even for not maintaining the smallest of small resolutions, also you're getting notices now. So private company notices is going to increase in the coming period. That is maybe in 23 now, you will find lots of notices on a private company now, because they realize public companies are being taken care properly by SEBI regulations. So now the target is private, because fertile area, right, for them to do a lot of harvesting. So therefore now they realize there's a lot of fertility here, and therefore they're trying to target for their harvest sake. Right? So be very careful. This is a major issue now that's going to come up. Then continue CSR committee If company has unspent CSR, now this is very interesting they've added. Let us say last year CSR was applicable to my company. Okay. But this year, let us say CSR is not applicable. Let's assume CSR is not at all applicable for me. Logically, I don't have to have a committee. But if I have unspent CSR money, which I'm trying to carry forward for 3 years, I'll explain about the unspent ongoing projects and so on. If I have that money, then I must continue with my CSR committee because they are the ones who told me that how I'm going to spend in the next 3 years. They have kept the roadmap and therefore monitoring they should only do. Therefore, committee continues. I think we are clear on this. Even if CSR is not applicable now, but because I have one old CSR money which I have not yet spent and I have unspent money which I can carry forward for 3 years, then I will continue to have my CSR committee also. I think that is logical because they are the ones who have created this and they have to follow it up. Then the other part is very nice now. CSR obligation up to 50 lakhs, board may discharge the function of CSR committee. That means you don't have to have a CSR committee if the amount you are going to spend is not crossing 50 lakhs. So if it is up to 50 lakhs, you don't have to worry about CSR. So CSR committee not required in those cases. This is again an amendment which happened in 21. So if it is within 50 lakhs, by simple calculation, 2% is 50 lakhs. I mean, we're talking about 2% is your CSR spend, and that is 50 lakhs. So if 2% is 50 lakhs, then 100% is? Oh, sorry. I thought that was simple question. Yeah. You know, 2% is 50 lakhs. Then how much is 100%? How much? So that means we are talking about a profitability of 25. So the way you can look at it is like this. If your companies, that the client's profitability of the company is below 25, then you know CSR committee is not required. I hope you know what I'm trying to say indirectly. See the P&L. In the P&L, you know the profitability is not crossing 25. Then you know you don't have to have a CSR committee. Am I clear? You cross 5 crores. Come again, sir. Correct. You can tell them buy, no samosa. Absolutely. So what, I'll repeat the question for benefit of the rest of them. If I already had a CSR committee because of the old law, so this is an amendment, this has come only now. So because of the old law, I already had a CSR committee. Now the law says not required and I'm coming within that limits. That means I'm coming within the 50 lakhs limit and so on, and no unspent CSR also. Then can I tell them buy? Answer is yes. You can immediately wind up. It doesn't mean you're sending them out because they're still one of the directors of the board. Yeah, don't ask them to go off home. They're still part of board of directors. You're only avoiding the paperwork of another committee meetings with music, all that you will avoid. So you don't have to do any of those activities. That's all. Right. So let's come to the CSR expenditure part. That is the 2% expenditure. Now we say it is 2% of the average net profits of 3. So complicate. Yeah. First you told go by previous year. Correct? No problem. They said go by previous year. That is for applicability. But for spending, they want us to go by last 3 years average. Why you want to tell? First of all, some of them came to commerce because they were weak in maths. I mean, at that time it used to be like that only. Yeah, we all took commerce because maths barala. So commerce, yeah, the previous year, the 3 year average, right? So now they told, okay, make it as 3 year average, unnecessary. In that also one confusion started. You should know mathematics the way we can do. Yeah, Einstein also cannot match our mathematics. You told average of 3 years, correct? Then one chartered accountant calculated. You told average of 3 years. My company is existing only from 1 year. Other 2 years, I'll say plus 0 divided by 3. So less 0 plus 0 divided by 3, average. You will get 1 lakh point, right? So by that calculation, instead of doing CSR, he had to receive. Right? So he should receive CSR, Atara situation. So they changed the law again. I'm not joking. They changed the law. They changed the law and they added this dialogue. They added this dialogue or such lesser preceding financial from incorporation. It was not there before. They added these wordings because our people full mathematics, high level maths. Right? They said plus 0 divided by 3. CSR expenditure, right? So they changed this law again. Now they said if you're existing for 1 year, take 1 year only. 2 years means 2 years average only you take. If you're there for 3 years, take 3 years average. And this is what I said, give preference to local area. It's only not a mandate, it's only a directive principle. Failure to spend. Now, even now you still have to specify.
Local area means they have registered office.
Anywhere. They are not defined, absolutely not defined. See, especially for a company which has retail outlets across. If I have retail outlets across, like the showrooms what I have, because mine is a B2C transaction and I have retail outlets everywhere, then local area can be everything. Mera Bharat Mahan. The entire Bharat is local area. Forget about that part. Local area itself is not a mandate. So therefore, even if I have just one single office in Rajasthan, and I decide to spend all the money in Kalaspalyam here, there's one area called Kalaspalyam, right? If I came to know only after I saw one poster, one movie poster, Kalaspalyam, right? So if you're spending in Kalaspalyam, nobody is going to ask you saying that why did you do that? Because it's only a preference give to a local area, but no mandate. So nothing to worry about that. Right? Then come to the next part about failure to spend. You still have to specify the reasons for not spending and transfer the unspent amount to a fund. That we'll discuss about all these points within 6 months from the end of the year, unless it's an ongoing project. I'll tell you two types of projects. One is called ongoing projects and one is called one-time projects. One-time projects, as and when you spend, you have to do it. Then ongoing projects, of course, you have time for 3 years and so on. We will discuss about that in detail. Now, this is very interesting point. Administrative overheads cannot exceed 5%. I'm asking all of you one general question. Tell me in any of the organizations that you know, any organization that you know which your clients are dealing with, what will be the percentage of overheads of any business? Any business you take. Apart from the direct expenses is what is directly related to your revenue. Indirect expenses are all called overheads for us. All the indirect expenses as a percentage normally will be how much? Overhead percentages? 30 to 40%. That is what even I have seen in all the industries. On an average, the overheads will be 30-40%. Correct? Here we are telling it cannot cross 5%. Yeah. Everywhere industry standards is 30-40% as overhead expenses. Now here you're telling 5%. Now even to do spending, let us say there's a CSR and I have to do the spending. If you're telling limited to 5%, how do I spend? That means I have to stand on the balcony of my registered office and throw like this. Yeah, telling CSR because if I come, I have to spend overheads expenditure. This became a big issue about overhead expenditure. It looks like some unwanted point, but it's actually a very important point for practically spending. And we came out with remedy for this. The remedy for this is the MCA FAQs. MCA came out with a circular giving some of the frequently asked questions. One of the frequently asked questions was as 5%. We said, well, how the hell will we restrict ourselves to 5%? So there in one of the FAQs, they gave a solution. They only gave structural planning. So they said, if you think that expenses is going to go up, which will go up, they said, as a company, you don't spend. Give it to an implementing agency. And then you outsource. Outsource this to another entity. Next question comes, who is that another entity? That another entity can be your own NGO, your own. That means you can create your own NGO, or it can be a government. I'm using the word NGO in the broader sense. Technical wordings, if you want, then it says it should be a Section 8 company, or a trust, or a society which is registered under Section 12A and 80G of Income Tax Act, or which is exempt under Section 1023C for the purpose of including the educational institutions and hospitals, etc., etc. So that is what they mean. In that, they're telling you either it can be your own NGO, charitable institution, or it can be government ka charitable institution, or it can be any other charitable institution. But if it is any other charitable institution, they must have a track record of 3 years. So please be very careful here. If I am starting my own, I am X Limited, and I float my own X foundation, X Limited ka foundation if I create, then track record of 3 years is not required. I can create my own NGO. Then I'll call that as an implementing agency, transfer the CSR amount to that agency and make that agency spend. Then I don't have a problem of 5%. I hope you're understanding. Yes, because that 5% is for me as a company, but not on the implementing agency. So that way I can take care is what they're telling. So I can create my own trust, my own society, my own Section 8 company and make them spend the CSR amount by giving them the CSR policy. I told you in the previous place, you have to create a CSR policy and tell them how they have to spend and we'll monitor everything. It's a principal agent relationship. Please understand the wordings is implementing agency, and agency means principal agent relationship Indian Contract Act created. Therefore, they're only acting as a agent and I am the principal for it. So that is what we have to take care. Or I am not interested in creating my own trust, my own foundation. Then whatever government trust, government foundation, Section 8 companies are there, give it to them. If your objective is similar to their objective, you want to do something on, let us say, slum, rehabilitation and development, give it to them. They will do it for you, correct? You can give it to them. No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to give to any government agency. But I know one of these agencies here which is doing a fantastic job. I know they're doing a fabulous job. I can see them, they're honestly working and helping the people. Okay, for them, check whether they have 3-year track record. Are we clear on this? Yes. Oh, Rambani will scold. Straight away he says you are Reliance. All of you, proof. So tomorrow I'm going to go to Mumbai and I'll be sitting there in that office. Thank you, but yeah. Okay, I'm Reliance. Hmm.
Running an NGO for more than 6 years.
Hmm.
And now only I got second registration.
No problem.
Then
Absolutely. As long as you have, I understood. As long as you have a track record of existing from the last 3 years, no problem. They are not telling you must have a track record of having Section 12A for 3 years. I hope you understood the difference. It only says you must have a track record of having similar activities from the last 3 years. Your registration of 12A can be taken now. I have no problem. Your 12A registration and ATG registration, if you're taken now, absolutely no problem. Absolutely no problem.
The company pays to the trust, the implementation is that. Suppose they are given 10 lakhs.
You can take the mic, it'll help us. Incidentally, she is our next speaker. No? So
So with the money, suppose 10 lakh rupees is given for the trust for the implementation of a CSR activity. And then while implementing this, there are expenditure which the trust would incur. That would be the salary cost of the employees of the trust. Can that also form part of the CSR spend of the company?
fantastic. So I think you all heard the question. I don't have to repeat the question. If I am doing it as a company, we have a problem. 5% limit is there. If the implementing agency is doing, what we interpret is like this. You have to tell that these guys are doing for that activity. That is because the reason I've created that is for this particular activity. Everything is deemed to be a direct expense. I hope you understand the logic here. Everything I spend becomes a direct expense. There's no overheads now because it is for that project that I've hired everybody. I've taken the place, I've taken the vehicles, everything I'm doing for that project only. So everything becomes my direct expense for me. So there's nothing remaining as a indirect expense. I think we are clear on this. Yes. Yeah. So therefore, I think we're clear on all these aspects. So let me go to the last part here. Here, this part, there is now a provision for carry forward of excess expenditure to next 3 years. So if we saw in the beginning that many of the entities spend extra, that extra if they want, they can carry, if they want. There's no hard and fast rule, but if they want, they can carry forward it to subsequent years. But if you have to be careful here, this part is very important because many of the clients have come back to me telling me that, see, first, no, full Josh, they spent for CSR, full Josh only. I'm doing this project, that project, I have a lot of ambition. Normally, because anyway, you have to spend. Then why not do it with our objective? I always had this dream of doing something to society, and therefore you did it. Full Josh Marbitro. Next year, COVID came. And like something like that happened, let's say. Loss andre, they have profits, but not like how they expected like before. So they're asking, see, last time I already spent more. Can I adjust? No, adjust. So can I adjust last year? Actually, answer is no. This is something, please tell your clients also. Whenever they want, they cannot come and say, last year I spent more. No, you adjust. No, you cannot adjust. So the very important aspect for all of us to remember is this dialogue. Provided, what does it say? Provided a resolution to that effect is passed by the board. That means when you're spending extra, in the resolution you are told that according to 135, my spending is X amount, but I am spending X plus so much amount, and therefore I am passing a resolution that for that excess, the board is now approving its carry forward for the subsequent years. That should have been done then only, at the time of spending itself. Are we very clear on this? Because most of the companies, they come back only post-mortem. They'll come back next year and say, I've spent no adjust madi agala, because that time you should have passed a resolution for it. So only if you have passed a resolution, you can carry forward, not simply carry forward. It's not automatic. It's not automatic. If you don't pass a board resolution for carry forward, it is assumed that you wanted to spend more. And it stops there. Carry forward concept is not there. Are we clear? Filing requirement you have got, no? CSR2. CSR2. Okay. Resolution must be there. When I come and see, resolution must be there. That much I'll tell. Okay. I think I gave the answer. Past, present, or future. So resolution must be there. That's all I can tell. That is why I think now in that amendment they've added that audit trail. Yeah, create that audit trail compulsorily with timestamp. Next to meetings go baratte. Then again resolutions go, it will come, right?
Voluntary contribution by them.
Acha. So I'll just repeat, what he's asking is all those entities which have actually been spending more, are they also doing carry forward? The entities which I have shown that all those big guys, they're not doing any carry forward. They have taken it as a project to keep spending. So none of them are actually doing carry forward. Only all these private companies and all would like to do that. They don't want to take a chance. But those entities, because they've all driven by project. They said this is the project. Now this village, it's like adopting the village. Some Mahesh Babu movie was there, no? Something like that. What is that? Srimantudu. Something like that. I'm adopting the village. So like that. So these guys are all actually adopting like that only. They take over one area and they say, I'm going to spend. So they're not looking at how much is the CSR expend. They're looking at how much is required for that place to be rehabilitated. So that's how these guys are working on. So that is how they're going across. Fine. So I think now we'll get into what are the activities we can spend on CSR, because that is the most important. Client will always ask you this question. Okay, I have surplus. Tell me where I can spend. And we'll give a standard answer. Put it to some government fund. Yeah, PM cares, so Ganga, give it out to somewhere there. Instead, let us see what are the other options which are available, which they can do it. I think that's a better way of doing it going forward. Very small entity or not, don't care, it's okay. But otherwise, I think we can do a lot of difference to many of these entities. And I know so many charitable institutions who are doing fabulous jobs. I think you can as well give the money to them, monitor it. You can always monitor it to see whether they are spending it or not. Just to add one point before Sri takes over, like how we have a stock exchange, you're going to get a social stock exchange very soon. It's already been approved and you will have a social stock exchange very soon. And once the social stock exchange comes, it is going to be a game changer for all of us. Because in the social stock exchange, like how you have got in the regular stock exchange, the companies being listed, and you know how the prices are going up and coming down, like that you'll have all the NGOs listed in the stock exchange, and you'll know the ratings of all these NGOs. That means how we have given, like how you get the ratings for anything you want to eat, you know, the food ratings for the restaurants, right? All your Swiggies and Zomatos and things like that ratings, you'll get it in the social stock exchange. That way it gives you a good responsibility on the stock exchange also, and those NGOs today saying that they will become more competitive. Today, NGOs will like to take our services only as a formality. But tomorrow they'll take it up with a lot of seriousness. Why? Because they know that if they have proper recording, proper documentation, then their ratings will go up in the stock exchange, which means they'll be having better funding for all their projects to come. So the social stock exchange is coming soon. It's already been approved. Just a matter of time that it will be launched. You can search in the search engines, you can find stock exchange, social stock exchange policy document is there. It's a very large policy document.
So in fact, for our chartered accountants, it's quite a good option of a career in the office, what we can do. We have started that and we are working with around 60 NGOs now. We do the accounting, the minutes, payroll, filings, everything is done in such a way that they're ready for CSR funding. Mostly whoever is funding will look for that as one of the first points in the checklist. It can be a great revenue stream for us CA firms. Filings with the income tax, societies, the trust, society registrations, those type of filings only. Statutorily only that is required, and bylaws you have to follow. That's the only thing. So Raja has given quite a good grounding on what CSR is. What you understood now is actually going to flow through the entire rest of the session. It is now mostly like a Q&A where we can fast track. How the CSR law has evolved over the last few years or decades is how these points also in Schedule 7 have got added. Initially, there was hunger and poverty. What you see is a list which is very broad and you can interpret it liberally. So on how the liberal interpretation can be done also, we have collated a few points through the FAQs. So the eradicating hunger and poverty is one of the things. Healthcare plays a very important role. Then education is another of the things. Promoting education is very, very liberally interpreted. You will find quite a lot of things coming under promoting education. Gender equality, hostels for women, orphans, old age homes. This is also one of the erstwhile Schedule 7 points. It's continuing. Environment is a major importance right now. So anything towards the CSR spend on environment qualifies. Natural heritage, arts and handicrafts. So you're preserving of the heritage sites, museums, that sort of a work. Armed forces, veterans, war widows. So anything to do with the armed forces also qualify as a CSR spend for whichever corporate is spending. Coming to 7, 8 and 9. So 7, until 7, it was always there. After that, it has gotten added considering the more important things, current scenario requirements are there. So the training to promote rural sports, Olympic, nationally recognized sports. So sports is one of the important things because India today plays such a huge role in sports across everywhere and internationally. This is the Modi government initiative where Swachh Bharat, anything to do with Clean Ganga, Swachh Bharat, whole lot of things relating to cleanliness along with the labs, these R&D labs, which do quite a good lot of work. They're also included. Contribution to incubators or R&D projects funded by government, specifically funded by government. If you contribute, it qualifies. Contribution to public funded universities, IITs, your national labs also gets qualified. Anything you do in terms of rural development that qualifies as CSR, slum area development, disaster management. Your COVID was largely termed as disasters. So anything relating to COVID falls under that. Healthcare, it comes under healthcare, the very first one. In healthcare, it qualifies. So now we'll see quite a lot of points where it is yes or no. Ideally, I would have wanted the question and the answer to come in later, but it is no rocket science. So the first thing we are seeing here is promoting education. This is under Schedule 7.2, where promoting education is largely interpreted is what I told. Here you will have quite a lot of them. So educating the masses and promotion of road safety awareness. So anything to do with road safety awareness, they're considering it as promoting education. So under road safety awareness, you will find safety, traffic engineering and awareness through print, audio and visual media. So if any of your IAs are doing these works and you're contributing, we are telling that it qualifies as CSR.
So this is trying to give you a broader perspective as to what they mean in Schedule 7. So Schedule 7 only gave you one line. So we are trying to tell you how that one line can be interpreted. So when you say we are talking about promoting education, even a road safety awareness is also called as education. So I'm trying to tell you as to how broad all these schedule 7 points are. You don't have to restrict it to one way of looking at it. So we're trying to broaden your perspective, saying that all this can be called as CSR itself.
And in fact, we are not telling this. This is given through the Ministry of Corporate Affairs FAQs that they have come up. In that they have, as and when the years have progressed and they have found more and more people asking questions on these lines, they have clarified it quite a bit. And as auditors, that's our role, where your client has spent on something and you have to actually qualify that it is CSR spend or not. So you will have a very good understanding through this FAQ. Non-academic technopark TBI not located within an academic institution, but approved and supported by Department of Science and Technology. Again, they're considering it as promoting education. And this is the Applied Research Training and Innovation Center at Nasik. The center will cover the aspects relating to CSR initiatives for the benefit of rural farming community. That also is going to consider as promoting education and a Schedule 7 activity. Vocational skills, okay. At the head of promoting education and vocational skills and rural development. So it will come under 3 categories. So, yes, sir. No, sir. So if the company is working through a trust, you don't have a concern. So the company is spending for this through some implementing agencies, you don't need any approval. In fact, nowhere there is a prior approval. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct. There is nothing called prior approval for any of them. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely.
But are there cases where the ROC have come back saying that it's not a CSR?
It is more than ROC coming back. Auditors have come back. You've got stat auditors who say that I don't agree this is CSR. Wherein they say I will have to report it, saying that I don't think this is CSR. So that way we have got situations. Till now, ROC as such has not come back telling it is not
None so far.
CSR.
In all the notices we've seen, none so far on CSR.
Because otherwise also CSR is very nascent still. It's still very new. So that kind of notices may take time.
Having said that, Ben 2 notices we have started to get already. There was late filing of Ben 2. They are now calling upon and telling default you've done in filing, so pay penalties. Maybe that way they will pick up. We never know. So anything under research in the area of research and studies can qualify. For that, what all are some listed items? Providing effective consumer grievance redressal mechanism. So anything you are doing for consumer redressal, think that it is qualifying. Protecting consumers' health and safety, sustainable consumption, consumer service, support and complaint resolution. So this is all of it in this category only. Any consumer protection activities, consumer rights to be mandated, all consumer protection programs and activities on the same lines as rural development education. So this is something I suggest if you have any doubt. Actually, Hina was telling me the maximum questions which she gets from her client more than anything is how to utilize their CSR funds. So if you can educate a client on what all qualifies as CSR, then they can take a more informed decision and what usually is an objective which is close to their heart.
I'll just, sorry to interrupt. See, normally the way we tell a client is like this. If somebody asks you, where should I spend my money? You should ask them to do a deep dive into their business itself. Ask them to do the deep dive into their own business. One of them was into packing industry. So they were into a packing industry and they're manufacturing these corrugated boxes and things like that. So we told him, okay, you deep dive into your own business and see as to what you want to do. So when they went on deeper, they realized that all these corrugated boxes comes from paper. Paper is coming from trees. Then they said, let me do a CSR activity of planting trees. That's how they go deeper. I'll give you one more example. Maruti also had this issue as to where do we spend the money. Then Maruti also went deeper to understand where is their pain point. Because for a corrugated packing industry, the pain point would have been afforestation. That means the trees. And therefore for them, CSR activity became trees. So Maruti, they looked into saying that what is their pain point? They said we're not getting the kind of people, labor force has always been an issue. Then they said, let us do vocational training as the CSR activity. Now, mind you, if the vocational training is done saying that I'll do only for Maruti, then it is wrong, because then it's become part of business. Anything part of business is not called as CSR. But if you give it as a general, like an ITI training, right? You know, these IITs and ITI trainings which are done, and you establish and say we're giving a vocational training, and that's what they did. They took the permissions for giving the courses from the government, from the Ministry of Human Resource. They took the permission saying that these diploma courses will have coming under vocational training, wherein they can get jobs in various places, not just only here. Incidentally, somebody may come and join their own Maruti industry also, but the fact is it's not meant only for that. It's meant for everybody at large, wherein you're trying to provide all that. That vocational training itself became a CSR activity. So in every industry, they can look deeper into their own businesses. They'll just come to know saying that I think I can do in this area. Then you link it with Schedule 7. Then you see under what broad category you can fall under for the sake of implementation.
Children are portraying that they have to save environment and all. Nowhere in the ad it says that it is promoting the sale of tea, but parents are carrying a cup of tea. So can we say this as a CSR spend because it is promoting education, or it becomes a part of advertisement?
So forget about that particular advertisement. Usko chhod do, okay? Let's take general advertisements. Until the end of the advertisement, we don't know what is that advertisement. Have you seen most of the advertisements? The advertisement until the end you don't know. Only at the end you come to know, aha, for this is the advertisement. So that means, so most of the advertisements today as a norm has become that you don't know for what this advertisement is. So therefore very difficult to say whether it was part of the normal course of business advertisement or part of CSR. So therefore, if you want to still call it as a CSR, that cup should not be there and the last initiative by so-and-so should not be there. Then I can call it as CSR. I think you understood, because ultimately the awareness is about one aspect, you have to stop there. So like how we talked about public safety, right, or traffic safety and all that. Correct.
That is why it has been mentioned as liberally interpreted. Any donations for the renovation of classrooms would qualify as promoting education. Very classically, I have seen that corporates give donations to Rotary to identify a school where they can easily do their CSR spend. Anything to do with drivers training, if you have actually in case, because anything that is going to give employment to people will qualify as vocational skills, and in that direction, anything you do will come as CSR spend. Capacity building for farmers covering best sustainable farm management practices, again a vocational skill. Training for agricultural labor on skill development, and training to enforcement personnel. So training to enforcement personnel, what we are telling is no, it is establishment function of government, so it cannot be covered. That aspect we are telling is not covered, and rest of the others you saw is covered.
See, what they're trying to say is what government is supposed to do, government only is supposed to do. That you can't interfere and say, I'll call it a CSR. Now, when it comes to training their own people, it is government's job to train its own people. That is not my job. So tomorrow I cannot say military training is happening and that military training I will give. How to use AK-47 and all. No, that is not my job. So that is government's job only. I can't call it as a CSR activity. Is what is the clarification they're trying to say. What is part of the government function only. Supporting the government can be my job. But what is their job only, it will be their job. So government owned personnel, if I do something that cannot be called as CSR.
Sir, on healthcare now we have a few things where provisions for aids, that is hearing aids and appliances for differently abled people in case we are doing something on these lines, trauma care around highways in case of road accidents, social business projects like giving medical and legal aid, treatment to road accident victims should be included. So all this are going to get considered under
this
health.
is where, madam, see, when we talk about highways, let us say there's some accident and these highway trauma care ambulances come. That is why we see on the ambulance, it will not be the company name, it will be the company's foundation. So you still have your company brand getting created, but that brand comes through the foundation. So you'll say it is so-and-so company foundation, or so-and-so company trust, so-and-so company charitable institution. So that way your company is still getting its name, but it is coming through foundation. And that is why as a structure also, we always advise create your own trust or a Section 8 company or a society and then do it. So that way you can say it is from your trust. Then you don't have a problem of advertisement.
Under disaster relief, quite a lot of things can get covered. The food supply we did during COVID times or these floods, whole lot of things. Disaster management, how the word itself suggests, whatever you would have done in terms of providing for that is qualifying as CSR. So food supply, medical aid, even though it can qualify as healthcare, it can qualify under disaster management also. Food supply can be covered under eradicating hunger, poverty, and malnutrition. Supply of clean water can be covered under sanitation and making available safe drinking water. So now you get a very broad idea. I'll quickly run through. Rural projects is quite simple to understand. Supplementing of government schemes like midday meals by corporates through additional nutrition. So even though government schemes are there.
Correct. Again, same. If you see here, I'm only supplementing it. That means government is already having its own midday scheme, midday meals, but I also provide extra nutritions. We say that we'll give that extra nutritions because you said now you have the nutritional dietitians who say that every day it must compose of so much of carbs, so much of vitamins, so much of iron should be there. And therefore you give that extra. That extra can be done. It's supplementing the government's job. That extra can be considered as a CSR activity.
Then we do our own research in the field of individual crops to find out the most cost optimum and agroecological sustainable farm practices. So on those lines, then to do product lifecycle analysis from the soil conservation point of view. So this is anyway there in the FAQs, which we will again make it available. So I'll skip through these.
I think we got overall an idea about this. I think we understood how broad it can be. Yes.
So let's say that there's a trust which generates the power using renewable and that is always gone. Would that qualify for CSR as well?
Very good. Very good question. In fact, you can tell this even for vocational training. I just add the same question only. One more example. You're providing vocational training. You're telling them how to do handicrafts. And when you're doing handicraft, they also produce bags. They make the bags. And incidentally, those bags are also sold because part of vocational training only. And then you make a surplus there also. So the law has taken care of the surplus part, telling that whatever surplus arises incidental to the CSR activity is also deemed to be plowed back into CSR only and not part of your calculation. What I mean by not part of a calculation is if my outflow is supposed to be 10 crores, 10 crores will be my outflow. Extra, if this earns, let us say 1 crore extra, then that 1 crore also has to be spent, it will become 11 crores. I think I'm clear on that. First of all, entity wise, you are a charitable trust. That means your incomes are all not at all taxable, right? So why are we going for chapter 6A?
So the reason being that there could be an entity which is generating this renewable energy. So if there's a company which supplies which provides the money to such a company, which receives the ADIA or EDG certification, then it will be eligible for CSR activities. Now the second part is that the trust, when they are generating some profit, whatever be nominal amount or be it, would they be eligible for tax exemption as well? Would they have to pay on it?
No. I think somewhere I'm missing the link. As far as the charitable institution is concerned, the charitable institution is a non-profit organization. So there's only they may have we call it as surplus, excess of income over expenditure is what they may have. It's not like a profit in real sense, correct? And that anyway, there's no question of taxability for them. As long as they take care of the requirements of 85% and those criteria under your 12A requirements. If they're taken, that they don't have any issue about chapter 6 at all. Then come to other question. I'll just try to, I don't know whether you meant that, but the other part is, it cannot be that there is a round tripping happening here only. That means I create a trust and trust supplies that to me only. you know what I mean. So if I am the beneficiary of that output, something is created by the trust and that I become the beneficiary of that output, then it's a normal business activity because they become ancillary and auxiliary products. So that we should be careful. As an entity which has given this to a trust, it should not happen to a round tripping wherein I only get the benefit out. Yeah, but I think you understood overall what I spoke on. Yeah. Coming soon. Coming soon. Nam ದೇಶದಲ್ಲೇ ಇರೋ ಕಷ್ಟ ಸಾಲದು. Expenditure, first of all, we were telling spend in local area. Yeah, and he's telling, well, my local area is Manhattan, you know, the Washington DC and the only local area. I was just joking, but I think I gave you the answer indirectly. Mera Bharat Mahan. Yeah. Can CSR be spent in cash? Dobbo. Paisa. So this is a question wherein whether I can give hard cash for CSR spending is the question. So let us look at it the other way around. Okay. Let us not look at it from the giver's point of view. Let us look at it from the receiver's point of view. Let's get into income tax. Can I receive donations in cash as a Section 8 entity? That will give you the answers. If you're coming under the exceptions, because during the COVID times, we had created circular exceptions, isn't it? So that anyway, that is routed through that only, that means which is being allowed. You will not have a problem there. But otherwise, I think you know the answer because you go by the receiver point of view because he's still an NGO, right?
Classrooms.
One more time.
At certain places, construction of washrooms or classrooms requires labor payouts, where most of the times they may not have their bank accounts. So it will be a mandatory obligation to spend in cash. How is the Companies Act looking at it?
See,
Not from the Income Tax Act.
correct. Now, let us look at it this way. First of all, let's be on the same page. Do we agree that this will be done by the implementing agency? That is by the NGO? Yep, NGO is doing. Directly, I'm only taking care. If directly I'm only taking care, then you are very dangerous because even a casual labor has to be your labor loss part, wherein you have to still disclose about your labor registers because now once you're doing it directly, they're all deemed to be company's employees, even casual labor. And you know, casual labor declaration forms also has to be filed under labor laws. One more time, sir.
CLRA, ESI, PF, everything. is
Everything.
required.
So very dangerous. If you ask me, I will never advise that. My advice would be that never do it from your company. Better give it to implementing agency. That is one of your own NGOs, like what sir is also telling. You land up with a lot of unnecessary complications for that. Sir, can you give the mic there, please? Yes, sir.
Once they pay in cash, actually, they should look at the PF compliances, no? ESIC compliance. Ultimately, you will get into trouble there itself. There is the issue there.
Correct.
Or you should do through a contractor. He should do the work and ensure that the contractor is complying with all the labor regulations. That's all.
That is practically that is what is done also. We generally give it to
a contractor who executing the work. That's all.
absolutely.
And most corporates find these IAs who do that.
Yes, sir.
Cash, bank transfer is done.
Then there's no problem only, no, sir. Absolutely no, because anyway you got your UPI payments are always allowed. No problem at all. Yes.
The next of it, Raja, is
Yeah, so just look at the other aspects here. Thanks. This is what Reliance did. What Reliance did was they did a Samohik Viva of the AIDS patients. Now this entire Samohik Viva which they spent was claimed as a CSR expenditure because if you see the whole activity is not just a Samohik Viva, it was for the AIDS patients. So that is where it gets linked. We're saying that again you're doing it for a particular section of the society which requires to be taken care. Similarly, if you see here, war against plastic, Adidas did this, wherein they raised a war against plastic use. SR Foundation did something called as inclusion of the transgender people in job fairs. Now, again, we are not talking about they taking it onto their own payrolls. It becomes normal course of business. What you do for yourself is always normal course of business, but they did this as an awareness program. As an awareness program, when you're doing it, then that will qualify as a CSR expenditure. These are all some of those practical examples we're trying to give so that you understand how they're all doing it. And here are some of the innovative ones which was done by all these entities. Now, ICICI Academy for Skills, look at what they did. They created one academy for skills. Shri was talking about vocational training programs, and this is how they created. One was for Academy for Skills. Then Microsoft created what is called a cyber security programs. They did that for cyber security. Then skills for marketing training is called a SMART by Tech Mahindra. So Tech Mahindra did this called as skills for market training. Again, does it mean that they're doing all this only for their own organization? No, it is for the regular certification courses which gets the approval from the government, because all vocational trainings basically means what? Your certificate, what you give, should be able to get them a job in some of these places. That means it will become a recognized certification that you have to take the permission from Ministry of Human Resource telling that we are going to give a certification diploma courses. Similarly here also, Oppo India, they also did this, wherein they talked about migrant workers, right? About how to ensure that migrant workers are given some justice. Again, that was another NGO activity they did. So all these are some of those creative CSR initiatives which are undertaken by many of these entities. Here is Maruti. I think I've already given you the example before. I told you about Maruti, wherein they adopted 40 industrial training institutes, ITI. So they said, we'll take over those ITI institutes and spend everything there, enhancing skill level of youth, making them employable. They're not telling into Maruti alone. They're telling they are making them employable into any of those ITI sectors. So all this was considered as CSR activity. Incidentally, if some of them land up coming into the company, that's not a problem. Incidentally. But what happens is that is why what very cleverly they did was they have adopted industrial training institutes. Now, industrial training institutes does not deal with only automobile sector. It'll be dealing with the electronic sector. It'll be talking about the hardware sector. So therefore, it is much broad-based. So if you're telling only here, which is coming only to me, then that becomes a questionable transaction. So nobody did a questionable transaction. They've all done it in broad-based, so that it's not incidentally one or two may come to me, no problem about it. Absolutely no problem. No issues, no issues. Now let's come to what is not CSR. Very interesting. What does not qualify as CSR at all? Let's start. Anything which is not there in Schedule 7, anything which is not there in Schedule 7 is not a CSR activity, because Schedule 7 is wide enough to cover a lot of activities, because we saw how you can interpret Schedule 7. CSR activities outside India, sir. Our local area, right? So anything outside India is not a CSR. One exception is there, wherein our sports players, all the sports players who are representing India for Olympics, now they require training outside India, because we don't have such kind of infrastructure facilities in India which will be equivalent to the requirement they want. See, can you tell me what is the biggest training facility that is required for an Indian Olympic player? What is the most important thing that is required? You know what? Shall I tell you? Opposite player. That is supposed to be the biggest thing required. Everything else you have, but all the other fellows who play against you are Dabba fellows. Then how will you actually train? You're not being trained at all. So only when you go and fight against those guys, right? Then you know where you stand. And therefore, for them, the biggest is to go there to get those players. But those players are not coming here. So you have to go there, not to play against them, to enhance your skills. That is the only exception they've given, wherein the training for those are representing India. They said for that, going outside is okay. Except that in all other cases, it has to be Mera Bharat Mahan. Yes? Great. Outside India activities, perfect, sir. What sir is telling is, if I'm doing something outside India, I will not call it as part of my CSR. So just like how we discussed before the break, you're not banned from spending. Like how we told you before the break also, we were discussing, that you can issue the shares above the valuation price, as long as you're okay to pay tax. Like that, here also, you're not banned from spending the money, Only thing is it will not qualify as CSR expenditure. You still want to spend, you can spend. Are we clear on this? Right. Then activities exclusively for the benefit of employees of the company or their family members. Anything which is going to benefit employees, because that will come under staff welfare. Staff welfare is incidental to business itself. Similarly, activities undertaken in the normal course of business. That's why I said never link it with business. Like we talked about advertisements, which I can link it with my business, then it becomes difficult to prove. Then contribution to any political party, yay. So all this does not qualify as CSR. Then one-off events such as marathons, awards, contributions, sponsorships. This is sponsored by, like your IPL match and all. They'll say this is sponsored by so and so, and that's not considered as CSR at all. Any sponsorships are not considered as CSR. Expenses incurred for fulfilling any act or law. Do you know many of these factories have a compulsory requirement to have a canteen. They'll have a compulsory requirement to have a dispensary, especially the manufacturing units, if you see there. Now, can you say, oh, I created a dispensary, so healthcare. So I'll claim it under Schedule 7 as health and all that. What is compulsory to be maintained under various labor laws cannot be called as CSR activities. And I'm sure many of you who deal with manufacturing industries will know it. There are certain environmental compulsory, what do you call it, as recycling plants you have to put up next to the, the outflow of the manufacturing entities. Now you can't say I'm doing environment protection. That was compulsorily required under that license itself. That is not called as CSR. Are we clear? That will be not called as CSR. So these are the points which have been considered as not CSR at all. Now this is again part of the definition of CSR now. In the definition of CSR, it says CSR does not include the following. So it says this is not called as CSR at all. Now let's come to compliance calendar. Now this is very important now from our point of view as practice as to what you have to take care in CSR matters. Can you just tell this compliance part?
It is quite simple. There is not very complicated like what we saw in the earlier session of funding compliance. Here, it's a calendar year which is given. Q4 typically is a board meeting for reviewing the CSR activity done during the financial year. So whatever you would have done during the financial year, because your CSR spend is the financial year spend, the last quarter, which is the first quarter of the calendar year, you'll take care of that. Actually, at the start of the financial year, you'll review the CSR done in the previous year. This is only indicative we are telling. Nothing is given under law. You can draft board minutes in such a way that these points get covered. A review of CSR done in the previous year, then review of the progress of CSR done in the half year. So that half year, what you would have done, you can put that in the minutes. And if required, review the general CSR activity or any other reason. So in terms of CSR, there is nothing you have to mandatorily do apart from the CSR spend that the board has to approve.
The firefighting is here. The firefighting for all of us will be in the last quarter because company will not have spent anything. Yeah, last 3 months, wherein you say this becomes very important. Board meeting for reviewing the CSR activity done for the financial year. So this is something which we have to take care. In January, February, March, like how we'll be busy taking care of whether we have given proof for TDS for all the employees, how much TDS to deduct, whether all the ETC proof has been given January, February, March, full busy. So like that, this also for CSR, if they have not spent during the year, last quarter becomes very, very important to ensure they have spent. If they still don't spend, then comes the below points.
Check if there is any ongoing project unspent amount. If there is unspent amount, you have to think that actually most clients complain to us telling you didn't tell. We send repeated reminders. We tell them this is your CSR spend you are supposed to spend. Despite the fact they miss it. If they miss it and they don't spend, you know where it will go. It will go to PM Cares. Within the 6 months close of the financial year, you have to spend there. In case there is an ongoing project which is an unspent amount, then you have to transfer it to an unspent CSR amount account. That is where the money is going to go to. So this is as far as the CSR ROC Companies Act compliance is concerned. Now comes the CSR rules which were amended. Most of it have already been touched on. I will go directly to the implementation agency where who can spend such CSR amount, to whom you can give the CSR amount. It can be a Section 8 company that we all know, a trust or a society which is exempt under 1023C of the Income Tax Act or registered under section 12A and 80G. Raja already dealt with this in the start. He told you what is an implementing agency, then what is actually a trust and a society. You can go ahead and do. These can be established by the company themselves, or it can be established by the government or through an act of parliament. Or the trust whom you are going to work with should have a track record of 3 years of this CSR activity. This also we've already answered. So who are the eligible entities? So can every trust or Section 8 company be a CSR entity? No, it is not possible. Why? Because you have to be registered under 12A and 80G or under the 1023 category. Only these are the type of trusts who can be eligible for implementing agencies. Then what kind of activities have to be done by such entities? This is no brainer. It is your Schedule 7 activities these trusts have to be doing. Whether all trusts, NGOs, Section 8 companies can register under CSR rules? No, because the entities should have a track record of 3 years. The 3 years track record is important. You as your own company, you are spending it, then you don't have to worry. Otherwise, if you are going with a trust, it should have a track record of 3 years. Then there are further eligibility criteria like you should be registered under CSR 1 that we will see a little later. Is the track record criteria applicable in all cases? No, if the company either singly or along with any other company it is going to spend, then such track record is not required. So if you don't want to do it on your own, then you can do it together with other corporates and come up with what can be your CSR spend. So for CSR 1, this is very important, where anybody receiving the CSR funds, mandatory that we have to get a CSR 1 registration. So CSR 1 is mandatory to be filed for implementing agencies to become eligible to receive CSR funds. Only then you can pay. So not that everybody needs to register, but if you want to receive money, then you have to register. Except the entities, that is the 1023C. Sir was asking about hospitals and colleges, whether you can directly donate. They don't have to be having a CSR 1. Then if IA is formed by a company for doing CSR activities, the reference of the SIN to be given thereof. So when you are filing the CSR 1 form, there you have to fill the CIN. On submission of the form CSR 1, a unique CSR registration number will be generated by the system automatically. So that also you need to take care. The documents required, anyway, this presentation is going to be available, the trust deed and those type of things you need to do. And who has to digitally certify? So for a company, a director, for a trust, a trustee, those type of requirements are there. Whoever can sign, they will be the authorized signatories. Now come to the CSR 2. So CSR 2 not only forms part of your AOC 4, you have to attach it as a part of your AOC 4, which is your annual return. But in the current rules, they've also told up to 31st March 2023, you have to file the e-form CSR 1 before 31st March of 2024. The last year also it was there. The prior to that year also was there. This year also currently it holds good. So you have to file the e-form CSR 2. And display of the CSR activities on the website is a requirement. The profits from the CSR expenditure. So we'll see what is the minimum CSR expenditure we are all required to do. 2% of net profits. What is the maximum? Maximum can be anything. Only star mark is that the board has to approve that. So the surplus from CSR, already we answered that any surplus that is coming out of the CSR activities that is taken care of, you're generating revenue through that or surplus, it has to flow back to the CSR trust itself, the CSR account. Now, if you have done a CSR expenditure in excess of the 2% net profit, so such CSR profit which is in excess, such amount can be set off against the requirement of spend for the next subsequent 3 years. So it is only capped at the next subsequent 3 years. Let's say I have spent excess amount of 2 crores, and this 2 crores out of that next MCA portal. Yeah, correct. CSR 1. You will generate that through filing CSR 1. See, that unique SIN number is for another entity, not all entities you need to give that. Correct. Correct. If I'm not wrong, that some certificate registration number you have to put or something like that. Yeah, no problem. No problem. If by registering, you will be eligible to receive. That's the only thing.
Sir, that we are talking about the corporate identity number. For example, if Reliance is starting Reliance Foundation, because Reliance Foundation is started by Reliance, when they're creating foundation, you'll tell this is the sin of Reliance. Because Reliance is starting this. At that time, they don't require sin. Then there is no sin.
It's not mandatory for all entities. SIN is not there for all entities. So some registration number, anybody who's practically done it.
Yes, sir. Correct.
By the CA or CS, as ma'am informed.
Correct.
Now, in many cases, what I have also observed is when the trust is 1 year or 2 year old, and they are very keen to take the CSR funding, they give that answer as yes, though they have not completed 3 years. In those cases, tomorrow, if MCA or ROC find out these type of trust who has given a false information at the time of registration, what may be the impact?
There are
sir?
penal provisions in the
Okay.
subsequent slides.
There is no impact for the donor.
For the
See,
CS,
because donor does not know whether you have done it correctly or not. Correct? It is for the donee. I think you understood what I'm saying. Company which is giving the money to an NGO, it only sees whether that NGO is registered under CSR1.
But won't there be a obligation on the CSR committee also to look into whether
Absolutely.
the trust has done a sufficient work or
Absolutely.
not?
Correct.
So where they can check whether these trusts or NGOs have a 3 years of experience or not?
Correct. So as a personal requirement, the CSR committee has to go through that to see whether, irrespective of what is filed in CSR1, you should also see whether there has a track record of 3 years, because there's still a responsibility of the committee. So committee must have enough of documentary backup to prove when this, because there's always a registration document of creation of Section 8 company or the trust or whatever. So you have to see the formation document that have taken all that as an audit evidences.
Trusts. Will there be any implications on the donor also, sir? In the practical scenario?
Yeah, in the practical scenario, I can be holding the committee responsible for violation of CSR rules, no? Because 3 years
Okay.
is not that you're not checked properly.
Penalty
But
provisions.
we don't
That will
have
come.
committee.
Penalty is going to come through. If you can go through the next one, because I think we're time up.
Okay. So basically any excess amount, you can set it off in the subsequent 3 years. So the cap is only 3 years, until which time you can set off such excess. But like what I just said in the start, it has to be approved by the board that it is excess spending, then only you can set it off. Any unspent CSR amount, if it is for ongoing projects, you have to transfer it to the unspent CSR account within 30 days from the end of financial year. We discussed this earlier. Other than for ongoing projects, if there are unspent amount, it is mandatory to go through the PM CARES fund and those type of things.
Yeah, so I'll just conclude with the last part of it. I will take it. I'll just take you through the last part of it, what is required for us. And that is, okay, this question and all, I think we've seen it, no? So you can escape and go to penalty there, down. No, yeah. So this is the problem, sir, what you asked. So what happens as far as penalty is concerned is like this. If any violation of the CSR provisions, for the company, it is twice the unspent amount required to be transferred to any fund included in Schedule 7 or unspent CSR account, as the case may be, or 1 crore rupees, whichever is less. And for every officer in defer, 1/10 of the unspent amount, etc. Now, if at all that is not a eligible trust itself, then it will be deemed to be unspent amount. Because it was not, it's like how we discussed, can I send it outside India? You can spend outside India, but that is not called as part of CSR. So this also will qualify in the same way. It will be treated as unspent amount. That is where they land up with the trouble. So that is where it becomes important for the committee to ensure audit evidences are established properly. In fact, I will show you one utilization certificate. Can you just see that utilization certificate? Yeah. If you see, this is how we always say you have to take a utilization certificate. Specimen of CFO certification for utilization of funds dispersed for CSR activities. Name of the CSR project, implemented through whom, which agency, then amount sanctioned, amount dispersed, amount utilized, and unspent amount. And here, so this point, if you see, the books of accounts and other records of the CSR projects as available with the company or the implementing agency gives reasonable assurance of the utilization. So that means we're also giving a certificate telling that I've seen the books of accounts. I think we answered that question part, right? So this is how, and you can get this format from the guidance note on CSR. You have a guidance note on CSR, which is issued by the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. ICSI has given this guidance note on CSR. You can get it through the regular search engine. You can find it there. They're giving you all these formats also. These formats are readily available with the ICSI guidance note on CSR. You'll get it there. And even for CSR 1, if you have any doubts on the CSR 1 filing also, you've got CA Institute's guidance note on CSR 1. It is there separately. So which tells you as to what all you have to take care while doing CSR 1 registration. Yeah, you get it in search engine. ICI guidance note is there on CSR 1. And impact assessment, I think that's okay. This is the 10 crores and above only. Great. So I think overall we understood about CSR. Only one last point on this. 2 types of expenditure I can have. What are the 2 types of expenditure? One is one time, other one is ongoing projects. Most of the companies as a last minute option, when they're not yet spent, adjust ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. At that time they will say, I'll call it as ongoing project. So 2 things have been clarified. Number 1, can I call one project which was supposed to be one time as ongoing? Answer is yes. And MCA said it's okay. MCA said you can pass a board resolution and tell that it's an ongoing project, that you have converted into an ongoing project. That means you started it as one-time project, but you decide to make it as a ongoing project is still allowed as long as the objective is CSR, they don't mind. They're a little liberal on this point. Other aspect of this is, when do you say ongoing project has commenced? See, you have to commence the project in that year. Let us say for the year ending 31st March 23, you have crossed the limits. 135 limit you have crossed. So in 23-24 you have to spend, correct? So let us say I have now come to end of 24. Now I'm in March 24, I have not yet spent anything. Now, can I say I'm doing something as ongoing? Because spending is required, because I told you cash. You have to actually spend, not accrual system. So how do you show I've already spent? The only way you can do it is 2 things. 1, if you have not spent anything, then like what Sri already told you, transfer the money to PM cares, etc. For that you have got how much time? 6 months time is there. So you still have 6 months time from the end of the year. So 31st March tak kuch nahi kiya, you have not done anything, no problem. Kuch nahi kiya to kuch nahi kiya. That money you send it off to PM cares or Ganga, Swachh Bharat and Clean Ganga, etc. You can give it off to that funds, because you still have 6 months time to do it. So is there something that earth will fall on us if I don't spend on 31st March? Actually, no, because I still have 6 months time to give it off there. One option. Second, but I want to do ongoing project. I don't want to give it off like this. I want to do some ongoing project. Now the question is, ongoing project should have been commenced during the year only. What I mean by commenced during the year, that is from 1st April to 31st May. In my example, by 31st March of 24, I should have commenced the ongoing project. Now, how do I say what is commencement? What is commencement? When do you say one ongoing project, 3 years project has commenced? When do we say? We'll take one photo for Gudli Puja. Yeah, with one Gudli Puja we did and all that. Is that how we say? How do we say that you have commenced ongoing project? Sorry? With whom? Oh, that's why you simply I say. Amount spent. One is you have to show that you have actually started to spend some money on that project, and you have the CSR policy telling about what is that project. One option, correct. One more. Committee, so CSR committee has been formed. CSR policy has been framed that it's an ongoing project. But did you commence the project? Absolutely right. That policy is ready, committee is ready. But did you commence the project? Because project should be commenced then only. Answer? Spend means you get very close to what I wanted. Correct. If you have spent like what sir already told, that is enough to show. Even 10 rupees you have spent, it's enough for me that you already started to spend. It may be 100 crore project. Fantastic. So fantastic. What they have told in the Ministry of Corporate Affairs as a clarification is, because it's an ongoing project, ensure you have the work order signed. Because this is as good as a contract. So ensure that you have a work order signed for this and create the documentation for the work order. And then whatever was unspent, in our example, full amount unspent, let us say, by April 30th, like she showed the compliance calendar, by April, ensure you transfer this money into unspent account, unspent CSR account, and then say from there, I have 3 years time to spend this money. So the documentation to show the work order is very important. It is there in the FAQs of MCA circular itself, which says that can be done. That's all it is. So I think we're clear about one time and ongoing projects also. Are we clear? Yes. Unspent, like how you have the dividends account you create in bank, separate bank account, like that you create unspent account. Perfect, perfect. So I think we're clear on this. I think we're also clear how to implement it. Those 3 agencies through which you can implement. I think we're clear on that also. Fantastic. So any other doubt? No? Yes. Yeah, we have to. Very good point, sir. Thank you for raising that point. I'll tell you what has happened in many of the cases. Company says, I have given the money to NGO. I have given the money to check de diya, deko. And actually it is lying in BRS, not even in bank. I'll BRS check given anta. Actually they would have given later. Not even then. BRS. So they've given the check de diya na mera kaam ho gaya. That is why I started my conversation telling it's a principal agent relationship. So if it's a principal agent relationship, if the agent has not yet spent, it means the principal has not yet spent. I think we are clear on this. So it will remain as an unspent amount. So you have to follow the same procedure what I told you. If it is one time, within 6 months, give it to PM Cares or Clean Ganga, etc. If it is ongoing, within 30 days, that is April 30th, transfer it to unspent. Ask that NGO to give back the money and put it to unspent account and again give it to them again. Are we clear? Correct. Correct. I understood. So that is why if you see here, sir, I've given one checklist. If you can see the checklist, I'll just take 5 more minutes to close. Hina, is it okay? Just 5 more minutes. So if you see the checklist, sir, type of the project proposed project activities, can we come down? Who are the direct beneficiaries, location of the project, then who is the agency which is doing all this activity for you here. Now here, if you see what are all the objectives they've done before and your project, if you see here, can you come down? Here. What are the details about the physical and milestones deliverables to be achieved through the proposed CSR? Everything is taken care. What is the budget estimates? And then documents showing the fund resources documents. Creating, this is the checklist what you have to create, sir. And then the mandatory requirements are what you asked there at the end here. If you see mandatory documents required at the initial stages, copy of the trust deed, registration certificate, bylaws to show about the past 3 years here. So this is part of our checklist. So only then I can say that I've taken care of my requirements, what is required. Then if civil construction is involved, documents of ownership, civil construction, whatever is done, approved copies of the plans, if there's a civil construction activity. So look at the documentation. If capital asset is there, then what are those capital assets, duration, quotations, what were the 3 quotations they took, best price was there. All this documentation we have to maintain. This is the kind of checklist that we're supposed to use for all the CSR. So therefore, it is not neki kar darya mein dal. Neki kar and maintain enough of documentation to prove that it has been spent. I think we are clear on this. Thank you so much.
Sir asked.
All this will be available in CA Institute. I'll give it to them. They'll give it to you. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyway, since Hina is talking, we'll stay back, sir. We can do vote of thanks at the end only.
Okay. That was a lively session, both in terms of PPTs presented and the knowledge dissemination both by both speakers. A big round of applause for both of them for that fantastic session. Thank you so much, sir, for that, and thank you so much, madam, for that fantastic efforts. On behalf of members present here and the managing committee members of Bangalore branch, we would like to hand over a memento to Srilakshmi and gift voucher to CA Vijayaraja, sir. As a token of respect and gratitude, can I request CA Rejo, our MC member, to come out to desk and hand over the memento? Thank you. Now we shall break for tea and reassemble sharply at 4:30 p.m. for the fourth and last session. I request all the members to drop the feedback form given by Turbo Comply in the entrance. Thank you.